Hello and welcome back to another video on the Library of Books and Daydreams. So I thought I would change my setup for this video, just because I want to have some fairy lights in the background, and it's super dark today and grim in the UK, so I thought it would be nice and cosy to set it up this way and have another bookshelf behind me instead. I'm also wearing you probably can't see it, but there we go, it says Eat, Sleeps and Read Books, which my mom got me for Christmas last year. So I am all set up for the second day of opening shops in the UK again, well in England again, so I am back to work and being a bookseller again, so I am just going to film this video and then I'm going to go to work. Anyway, this video is my second attempt at filming a November wrap-up video. I did film this a couple of days ago and went to edit it, and there was no sound, and I don't think my microphone was plugged in properly, which I should have checked before, but I didn't, and we ended up with 2 videos with no sound, but oh well. So we're here again today with my November wrap-up, which is mainly going to be my November TBR, but I also managed to squeeze some other books in there, so let's get started with that. So the first book on my NB November TBR was The Bonewitch by Ringe Pecco. I'm going to try and remember which prompts I did, but I won't promise you that I will be able to remember them all correctly. But I think this one was for NB side character, so somebody does question their gender identity in this book, which I found really interesting, as gender works completely differently in their world. But this was quite enjoyable. I gave it 3.5 stars in the end, I believe. I do find that I do struggle with certain types of fantasy still sometimes. I didn't really grow up reading fantasy, and therefore sometimes I can just get a bit confused with some types of fantasy. I feel like because of that I will probably enjoy, and I do want to read the other books in the series, and I feel like I'll probably enjoy them more, because I'll take this as like a world building thing, and then I know enough about the world to hopefully understand the other books a bit better. So that was my first book on the NB November TBR. My second book was You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I absolutely love this book. This was so good. I listened to it partly on audiobook and then read it partly in physical format. This is about a young black girl and her quest to become prom queen, and it was just funny and just beautiful, emotional, about friendship and family and love, and I just absolutely adored it. I gave this one 4.5 stars, and this was for the prompt. I think this was for the NB flag colour prompt, as it includes purple, which is on the NB flag. And the next book I read was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I ended up reading this one partly on audio as well, and I read it in basically a day because I was ill and I was literally just listening to the audiobook and playing Animal Crossing and then reading the physical format when I wanted to as well. This one really surprised me because I feel like every other book I've read from Alice, I've seen like a progression in her books as she's released them. And I feel like Loveless has been like up there for me before I read Radio Silence, so I wasn't sure quite how I would feel about this one, but it blew me away, it blew my mind. I was so sucked into the story, I absolutely loved it, I loved the characters. I gave this one 5 stars, and I think it's safe to say it's probably my favourite Alice Oseman book, which really surprised me. Oh, and this one was for a book recommended by an NB reviewer, and that was from Blue's video of recommendations that they did at the end of October in preparation for NB November. The next book on this list was also a 5-star read, and that was I Wish You All the Best by Mason Diva. This was amazing, I absolutely loved it so much. I've had a few recommendations for it, and it's just absolutely beautiful story. This follows the story of Ben, who comes out to their parents as non-binary and is then kicked out of the house, so they go to live with their older sister and their sister's husband, and then basically get started in a new school and a new life, and it's just about them coming out as MB. And I have never read the story of somebody coming out as non-binary before, and this one really hit me in the feels. It was just so beautiful, but so heart-wrenching and so hard-hitting, but so beautifully written and such an interesting representation of family and friendship, and it was just so emotional for me, but it's a beautifully told story and I absolutely loved it. I read this one for MB main character, I believe. It's either MB author or MB, it was MB main character, this one. And the next book I read was Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. I don't have a copy of this book. I borrowed it off my lovely friend Courtney and we both absolutely adored it. I will put the cover here for you so you can see the beautiful cover, and I will be getting myself a copy of this book because it is beautiful. It is a bit hard to get in the UK. It's not really available widely in the UK yet, but I will definitely be finding myself a copy. This was also a 5-star read from me. So this is about Felix, who is a trans guy, and he is attending an art school in New York, and somebody plays a prank on him which reveals his dead name, and there is some photos of him before he transitioned. It was an absolutely horrendous thing for Felix to go through, and then he basically focuses on who he thinks played the prank on him and put up this exhibition, as they call it, and then it's about him trying to find that, but it's also about him and his friendships and his family and his relationship with his dad and his mom, who's no longer around. And it's about New York, which I loved, and it's just about him trying to find out who he is and discovering that for himself, and it was also very, very hard hitting and emotional, and I've just never known a representation of somebody like that, and I really not related to, but I was sympathetic with Felix's story, and just at some points I had like all body shivers at Felix finding out things about himself, and I just felt so much for him, and he's such a beautiful character, so that one was another 5 stars from me, and I read that for MB author of colour. And the next book I read was Once and Future by A.R. Capita and Corey McCarthy. I read this one for MB author, and this one was so weird, but I loved it. So this is a retelling of King Arthur's story, but it is set in space, and King Arthur is a girl, and it's set in the future in which they refer to this Earth as Old Earth, and they live on different planets, and you can still go on Old Earth, but nobody really lives on it. It's quite desolate. This was just so wacky, but so diverse, and I just really loved the world that they lived in, and the character that comes from Old Earth is like trying to find out what it's like to live in their world, and you discover everything alongside him, and it was just amazing, and it was funny, it made me laugh in places, and it was heartfelt, and I just loved it. So I read this for MV author and it got 4 stars from me, and I would love to carry on with the series, and I will carry on with the series. However, I cannot find a matching edition to this one because it is a Lumacrate edition and they didn't publish the second book, which is devastating. And the next book I read was Wonderland by Gina Dawson. I was lucky enough to receive a proof copy in, I think it was May when it came out? Yeah, it was May, so thank you to the publisher for that. So I've wanted to read this one for a while. I heard Juno talk about it and do a reading from it back in February or March, I'm going to say February, and I was just really intrigued by it. It's a modern retelling of Alice in Wonderland that fits in with some of Juno's other books, which I think are clean and meat market. So it is called the London Trilogy, but I think you can read them without knowing the stories of the other. I haven't read any of the other books, and I completely understood this. So I think that's fine. I think there's just some cameos from the characters of the other books. Unfortunately, this one kind of missed the mark for me. There is a lot of heavy drug usage and sex, and it just kind of felt a bit off. I understand that Alice in Wonderland, the story, obviously does have a lot of like hallucinogenics and stuff, but it did focus a lot on like mental health and the main character's hallucinations, and you don't really know whether that's because of her mental illness or not. But yeah, it just felt quite heavy for me in a way that I didn't expect, quite hard hitting, and I just struggled with some of the themes, so I only gave this one 3 stars, but it's still a very interesting and intriguing retelling of Alice in Wonderland. And I read this one as a book that explored another gender identity because the main character is also trans in this one. And the last book that I read for Envy November was Boy Queen by George Lester. This book is amazing. I gave this one 5 stars. It was just so beautiful. Look how pretty this proof edition is. I just loved it so much. So this is about a character that is discovering drag, and he is amazing and he is fabulous, and he is a theatre kid and he misses out on a spot in drama school, and then because of that he ends up kind of pursuing other pathways and ends up getting into drag. This was an absolutely beautiful read. The characters are amazingly written, and going on this story was an absolutely wild ride, and I could not recommend this enough. If you are into drag, you will love it, and if you don't know anything about drag, like I didn't when I went into this book, I still absolutely loved it. George Lester has done an amazing job. This is 5 stars for me, and I read it for the prompt, an N or a B in the title, because this has B and N in the title. So I managed to finish my 8-book Envy November TBR on the 20th of November. I had an absolutely insane reading month and I was really proud of it. So I actually managed to also read the Divergent series. This has been sat on my shelf for a long time and I've wanted to read it for a long time. I have watched the films. I've watched Divergent I think twice, and then I've watched Insurgent and Allegiant once. So it felt a little bit weird for me because I kind of felt like I was doing a reread for some of it, because I didn't realise how similar especially Divergent is to some of the book. I enjoyed this series. It all came out as about 3 or 3.5 stars for me. I think the only one that was 3 was Insurgent, and then the others were 3.5 stars. So I did enjoy it. I just found Tris quite annoying as a main character, which I heard at the time, but I didn't expect me to dislike her as much as I did. And also it was hard to rate because I felt like I was rereading it even though I've never read it, so it was a bit odd. But yeah, I still had mixed feelings about this, but I'm proud of myself for managing to fit it in November on top of the Envy November readathon, so that was quite cool. So that was my very long November wrap up. I hope you are not bored and managed to make it through that video. There was a lot of books. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed Envy November if you joined us. And I will see you next time with another video. Please give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and comment down below with what you read in November, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching. Bye.